Well, the trouble is, it's not a holiday. It's always one of those terrible things when you meet people in the crowd who say, "Are you enjoying your holiday?"
In an unprecedented move that has sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace, King Charles has signed an emergency order stripping Queen Camilla of powers she has held since their coronation. This isn't a routine adjustment of royal duties. This is a complete restructuring of power that ends her influence forever. The emergency order. The halls of Buckingham Palace erupted into controlled chaos on the morning of January 28th, when senior advisors received word that His Majesty had made a decision none of them saw coming. King Charles, in a private ceremony witnessed by only his most trusted legal counsel and the Lord Chamberlain, signed an emergency order that fundamentally alters the power structure within the British monarchy. The document, bearing the royal seal and the king's signature, was delivered to Queen Camilla's private secretary at precisely 9:30 in the morning. Sources inside the palace describe her reaction as one of complete shock, followed by stony silence. This emergency order represents something the modern monarchy has rarely witnessed, a reigning king publicly limiting the authority of his queen consort. The specific details of the order remain closely guarded, but palace insiders confirm that it removes Camilla from several key decision-making positions she had occupied since the coronation in May of 2023. Most significantly, she no longer has any say in matters regarding the Prince and Princess of Wales or their children. Her influence over royal scheduling, public engagements, and even certain charitable patronages has been dramatically curtailed. The legal mechanism Charles employed is particularly noteworthy. An emergency order of this nature invokes royal prerogative powers that haven't been used in this manner for generations. Constitutional experts are already debating whether this sets a precedent that could fundamentally change how future monarchs interact with their consorts. The king didn't need parliamentary approval or even consultation with the Privy Council. This was a unilateral decision made with the full weight of his constitutional authority. What makes this even more dramatic is the permanent nature of the changes. This isn't a temporary suspension of duties or a trial period. The language of the order makes clear that these restrictions are indefinite and can only be reversed by another formal order from the king himself. Given the circumstances that led to this moment, palace watchers believe the chances of reversal are virtually non-existent. Queen Camilla's role has been fundamentally redefined, and there appears to be no path back to the influence she once wielded. The power Camilla held. To understand the magnitude of what King Charles has just done, we must first examine exactly how much power and influence Queen Camilla accumulated during her time as queen consort. From the moment she married Charles in 2005, she began a careful, methodical climb toward unprecedented influence within the royal household. By the time of the coronation, she had positioned herself as perhaps the most powerful queen consort in modern British history. Her influence began subtly. As Duchess of Cornwall, Camilla slowly integrated herself into Charles's decision-making processes. She attended private meetings with his advisors, offered opinions on everything from public engagements to family matters, and gradually became indispensable to his daily operations. Those who worked closely with the couple noticed that very few decisions were made without her input. Charles, who had waited his entire life to become king, seemed to rely heavily on her judgment and support. When Charles ascended to the throne in September of 2022, following the death of Queen Elizabeth, Camilla's power increased exponentially. She wasn't content to play the traditional ceremonial role that previous queen consorts had occupied. Instead, she carved out real authority in areas that had historically been the sole domain of the monarch. She had significant say in which charities received royal patronage, which family members would undertake which duties, and even who would have access to the king himself. Perhaps most controversially, Camilla wielded considerable influence over matters involving Prince William and Catherine. Sources close to the Wales family suggest she frequently inserted herself into decisions about the education and upbringing of Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. She had strong opinions about how the future king should be raised and wasn't shy about expressing them. This created friction with William and Catherine, who understandably wanted to raise their children without interference from Camilla. Her control extended to the very fabric of royal life. She influenced staff appointments, ensuring that people loyal to her occupied key positions throughout the household. She had the final say on guest lists for state dinners and private gatherings. She even exerted influence over media strategy, determining which journalists had access to royal events and which stories received official cooperation. Palace staff began referring to her privately as the true power behind the throne. Camilla also maintained tight control over Charles's schedule and access to him. She determined which meetings he would take, which causes he would champion, and how he would spend his time. Advisors who wanted to present ideas or concerns to the king often had to go through her first. This gatekeeping role gave her extraordinary power to shape policy and priorities. If Camilla didn't approve of something, it rarely made it to Charles's desk. Her influence wasn't limited to private matters. She shaped public perception of the monarchy through carefully orchestrated media appearances and strategic charitable work. She rebuilt her image from the controversial figure who had been blamed for the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage into a respected senior royal. This transformation required control over messaging, media access, and public engagements that she guarded jealously. The coronation in May of 2023 represented the pinnacle of her power. Unlike previous queen consorts, Camilla was crowned with a ceremony and regalia that emphasized her status and authority. She didn't just support Charles, she stood beside him as an equal partner in the monarchy. The symbolism wasn't lost on observers. This was a queen consort unlike any Britain had seen in generations. Beyond ceremonial matters, Camilla's influence extended into the realm of royal finances and property management. She had opinions about how royal residences should be maintained and modernized. She influenced decisions about which properties the family would use for which purposes. When renovations were planned at Clarence House or discussions arose about the future use of various royal estates, Camilla's preferences carried enormous weight. Staff members learned quickly that going against her wishes in these matters was a career-limiting move. Her network of allies extended beyond the palace walls. Camilla cultivated relationships with influential members of the aristocracy, business leaders, and cultural figures. These connections gave her additional leverage and sources of information. She knew what was happening in elite circles often before official channels reported it. This informal intelligence network made her an even more formidable figure within the royal ecosystem. In the realm of family dynamics, Camilla positioned herself as a central figure in ways that went beyond traditional queen consort duties. She had opinions about which family members should be included in major events and which should be kept at arm's length. Her relationship with Prince Harry and Meghan was particularly fraught, and many observers believe her influence contributed to decisions that ultimately pushed the Sussex couple toward their departure from royal duties. Whether intentionally or not, she became a polarizing figure within the family itself. Behind palace walls, the public face of the monarchy always presents unity and harmony, but behind the ornate doors of Buckingham Palace, Sandringham, and Windsor Castle, a very different story has been unfolding. The tensions that led to Charles's emergency order have deep roots, stretching back years, but they reached a critical point during the autumn and winter of 2025. The core of the conflict centers on two fundamental issues: Camilla's relationship with Prince William and Catherine, and her influence over how the monarchy itself is evolving. William, as heir to the throne, has very clear ideas about what the monarchy should represent in the 21st century. His vision emphasizes youth, relevance, environmental responsibility, and a streamlined institution. Camilla's approach has been markedly different, favoring tradition, maintaining extensive royal privileges, and preserving the status quo that has served her well. Multiple sources describe a particularly heated confrontation that occurred in early December at a private dinner at Windsor Castle. William reportedly challenged Camilla directly about her interference in decisions regarding his children. The exchange became so intense that Charles had to intervene, but even he couldn't calm the situation. Catherine, normally diplomatic and measured, made her position crystal clear. Camilla needed to step back from any involvement in their family matters. The dinner ended early, with William and Catherine departing abruptly. Staff members caught in the middle describe an increasingly toxic atmosphere. They spoke of being asked to carry messages between the King and Queen's household and the Wales household, rather than people speaking directly. They witnessed quiet arguments in corridors and felt the tension at family gatherings. Some senior staff members reportedly threatened to resign if the situation didn't improve, unwilling to continue working in such a fractured environment. The Christmas period at Sandringham, traditionally a time for family unity, instead became the setting for the final breakdown. Various family members gathered for the celebrations, but the atmosphere was anything but festive. Camilla apparently made several comments about how the Wales children were being raised, questioning whether they were being adequately prepared for their future roles. She also criticized some of William's recent public statements about the need for the monarchy to modernize and reduce its environmental footprint. Prince Harry's memoir and subsequent interviews had already exposed deep rifts within the family, but this was different. This was happening at the very top of the institution, between the king's wife and the heir to the throne. Palace officials recognized that if left unresolved, these tensions could genuinely threaten the stability of the monarchy itself. Something had to give. Charles found himself in an impossible position. On one side stood his wife of nearly 20 years, his companion and support through decades of public scrutiny. On the other side stood his son, the future king, and the family that represents the monarchy's future. For months he tried to mediate, to find compromises, to smooth over the conflicts. But by January, he apparently concluded that mediation had failed. Dramatic action was required. Private conversations with trusted advisors revealed Charles's internal struggle. He reportedly spent sleepless nights weighing his options, understanding that any decision would have profound consequences. Some advisors urged him to be patient, to let time heal the wounds. Others argued forcefully that William's position was correct and that allowing Camilla to continue undermining the heir's authority would be catastrophic for the monarchy's future. The turning point came during the first week of January, when William apparently delivered an ultimatum. While the exact words remain private, sources suggest he made clear that he could not and would not continue operating under conditions where Camilla exercised veto power over his family's decisions. He reportedly told his father that the choice was simple: either Camilla's influence would be curtailed, or William would begin distancing himself publicly from the monarchy in ways that would raise uncomfortable questions. The decision to issue the emergency order wasn't made lightly. Charles consulted with his most trusted advisors, legal experts, and even reached out privately to former senior royals for counsel. Everyone he spoke with apparently reached the same conclusion: Camilla's continued interference was causing irreparable damage to family relationships and threatening the smooth transition of power to the next generation. The institution had to take precedence over personal relationships. The royal fallout. The immediate aftermath of the emergency order has revealed fault lines within the royal family that many suspected existed but few could confirm. The reactions from various family members and palace officials paint a picture of an institution grappling with unprecedented internal conflict while trying to maintain a facade of normalcy for the public. Prince William and Catherine's response has been carefully measured in public, but sources close to them describe relief and vindication. They had reportedly been pushing Charles for months to address Camilla's overreach, and the emergency order represents a complete victory for their position. William has apparently expressed private gratitude to his father for making what must have been an extraordinarily difficult decision. The Wales household staff describe a noticeably lighter atmosphere since the order was signed, as if a great weight has been lifted. The change in dynamics has been immediate and palpable. William now has direct access to his father without Camilla's interference. Meetings about the future of the monarchy, discussions about policy, and conversations about family matters happen without her presence or input. This has allowed for more open and honest dialogue between father and son, strengthening a relationship that had been strained by Camilla's constant presence. Princess Anne, known for her no-nonsense approach and dedication to duty, has reportedly expressed quiet support for her brother's decision. She has long believed that clear lines of authority and responsibility are essential to the monarchy's proper functioning. While she maintained a cordial relationship with Camilla, Anne apparently agreed that the Queen Consort had overstepped her role. Her support carries significant weight, as Anne is widely respected within the family for her judgment and commitment to the crown. However, staff members who were appointed through Camilla's influence or who worked directly for her household find themselves in uncertain positions. Some have already begun quietly seeking positions elsewhere, recognizing that their patron's diminished status affects their own prospects. Others are attempting to pivot, to demonstrate loyalty to the king, rather than specifically to the Queen Consort, hoping to preserve their positions. Legal experts note that while the monarch has broad powers under the royal prerogative, using them to limit a consort's role is virtually unprecedented in modern times. Questions have been raised about whether Parliament should have any oversight over such decisions, though most agree that the internal management of the royal household has traditionally been beyond parliamentary purview. Still, the dramatic nature of this particular action has prompted calls for greater transparency. The impact on the line of succession and royal duties has been immediate and practical. Camilla will continue to hold the title of Queen Consort and will perform ceremonial functions, but her ability to influence policy, family matters, and the day-to-day operations of the monarchy has been eliminated. She will attend state functions and fulfill public engagements, but always in a strictly defined, limited capacity. The real power and influence now flowed directly from the king to Prince William, clarifying the chain of authority in a way that hadn't existed before. Foreign governments and diplomatic circles have taken note of this development with great interest. The British monarchy plays an important role in soft diplomacy and international relations. Any instability or uncertainty at the top of the institution could have ripple effects on Britain's standing in the world. Diplomatic sources suggest that foreign offices are closely monitoring the situation to understand how it might affect their dealings with the United Kingdom. Some ambassadors have discreetly inquired about the stability of the monarchy and whether this signals deeper problems. The Church of England, of which the king is supreme governor, finds itself in a delicate position. Charles and Camilla were married in a Church of England blessing, and the church crowned them both at the coronation. The emergency order doesn't affect Camilla's title or her crowned status, but it raises theological and ceremonial questions about the nature of the Queen Consort's role. Church leaders are reportedly in discussions about how to address these questions without causing further controversy or appearing to take sides in what is fundamentally a family matter. Public and political implications. Beyond the palace walls, the emergency order has triggered intense public debate about the monarchy's relevance, its internal dynamics, and its future in modern Britain. The reaction from the British public has been predictably divided, reflecting the complex feelings many people have about Camilla and the royal family more broadly. Polling conducted in the days following news of the emergency order shows a nation split in its sympathies. Younger Britons, who generally favor William and Catherine and support modernization of the monarchy, largely approve of Charles's decision. They view it as necessary to protect the institution's future and to ensure that the next generation of royals can lead without interference. Many in this demographic never fully accepted Camilla due to her role in the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage, and they see this as long overdue accountability. The generational divide is particularly stark. Those under 40 tend to see the emergency order as a positive step toward a more streamlined, modern monarchy. They appreciate that Charles prioritized his son and the institution's future over his personal relationship. This demographic values transparency and accountability, and they interpret the order as evidence that even the royal family must adapt to changing times and expectations. Older Britons, particularly those who remember Charles and Camilla's long relationship and her gradual acceptance by the public, express more sympathy for the Queen Consort. They view the emergency order as harsh and potentially unfair, arguing that Camilla has served dutifully since becoming Queen Consort and doesn't deserve such public diminishment of her role. Some in this group worry that Charles has been pressured by William into making a decision he may later regret. The British media has approached the story with characteristic intensity. Tabloids have run dramatic headlines and sought comments from anyone with even tangential connections to the royal household. Media coverage has also revisited Camilla's history, reminding the public of her controversial journey from the other woman in Charles and Diana's marriage to Queen Consort. This has reopened old wounds for some members of the public who never forgave her role in that tragedy. While polls don't show significant growth in Republican support overall, there has been a measurable uptick in the number of people, particularly young people, who question whether the monarchy remains relevant to modern Britain. The arguments are receiving more attention than usual, with mainstream media giving platform to voices calling for fundamental change. Political commentators note that each royal scandal or controversy incrementally erodes support for the institution. Even if no single event triggers wholesale rejection, the political establishment has maintained a studied neutrality, as is traditional when royal family matters don't directly impact governance. Prime Minister's questions in Parliament have included attempts to draw the government into commenting on the situation, but ministers have deflected, insisting that the internal arrangements of the royal household are not matters for government comment. However, private conversations among political leaders reveal concern about potential instability in an institution that, whatever one's views on monarchy, plays an important constitutional role. Behind closed doors, government officials are monitoring the situation carefully. The monarchy's stability matters for Britain's constitutional framework, its international image, and even its tourism economy. Civil servants in relevant departments have prepared briefing papers on potential scenarios and how the government should respond if the situation deteriorates further. While no one expects a constitutional crisis, the unprecedented nature of the emergency order has prompted prudent contingency planning. Commonwealth nations have watched these developments with particular interest. The king serves as head of state for 15 countries beyond the United Kingdom, and any instability in the monarchy could influence debates about whether to retain the crown or become republics. Australian Republicans have already cited the emergency order as evidence that the monarchy is too focused on internal British family dynamics to effectively serve as Australia's head of state. Public forums in Sydney and Melbourne have featured heated discussions about whether Australia should accelerate plans for a republic referendum. Similar arguments are emerging in Jamaica and other Caribbean nations, where the legacy of colonialism already complicated feelings about the monarchy. Political leaders in these countries face pressure from constituents who question why their head of state should be someone dealing with family drama in a palace thousands of miles away. The emergency order has provided ammunition to those arguing that the time has come to complete the process of decolonization by removing the British monarch as head of state. International media coverage has ranged from fascinated to bemused. American outlets have covered the story extensively, often drawing comparisons to celebrity divorces and family feuds. Cable news networks have devoted substantial airtime to the story, featuring British royal experts and former palace staff offering commentary and speculation. The financial implications cannot be ignored either. The monarchy's funding comes from the sovereign grant, which is tied to crown estate revenues, but public support for royal funding depends on public support for the royals themselves. Extended internal conflict could erode that support and potentially affect funding in future years. Economic analysts have noted that the royal family generates significant tourism revenue and soft power benefits for Britain, but those benefits require public confidence in the institution. Tourism industry representatives have expressed concern that ongoing royal drama could affect Britain's image as a destination. The royal palaces, ceremonies, and the mystique of the monarchy itself draw millions of visitors annually, contributing billions to the economy. Any perception that the institution is unstable or dysfunctional could diminish that appeal. While one emergency order is unlikely to cause significant damage, a prolonged period of public family conflict could have measurable economic consequences. What comes next? As the dust begins to settle from this unprecedented emergency order, attention turns to what the future holds for King Charles, Queen Camilla, and the monarchy itself. The immediate crisis may have been addressed, but the underlying questions and challenges remain, and the paths forward are fraught with both opportunity and peril. For Queen Camilla, the path forward is perhaps the most uncertain and challenging. She retains her title and will continue to appear at public events, but her role has been fundamentally diminished in ways that must be deeply humiliating for someone who had wielded such significant power. Palace insiders suggest she is considering how to rebuild her position and reputation within these new constraints, though the options available to her are limited. Some speculate she might focus more heavily on her charitable work, particularly causes related to literacy, domestic violence awareness, and animal welfare, areas where she has built genuine credibility over the years. By demonstrating value through public service, rather than palace influence, she might gradually restore some of her standing with the British public. Her patronages of organizations supporting survivors of domestic abuse have been particularly well received, and expanding that work could provide a positive narrative. Friends suggest she believes Charles has prioritized his relationship with William over his marriage, a perspective that undoubtedly complicates any path toward reconciliation. Whether she can find a way to gracefully accept her reduced role or whether resentment will continue to poison relationships remains to be seen. There are whispers that Camilla has considered withdrawing from public life more completely, perhaps spending extended periods at Ray Mill House, her private residence in Wiltshire, rather than continuing to fulfill royal duties that now feel hollow and performative. King Charles faces his own considerable challenges in the aftermath of this decision. He has prioritized institutional stability and the monarchy's future over his personal relationship, but that doesn't make the situation any less painful or complicated. He must now manage a household divided between his wife and his son, while continuing to fulfill his duties as monarch. Those close to him describe a man who firmly believes he made the right decision, but who is struggling with the personal cost. The impact on Charles and Camilla's marriage itself is a subject of intense speculation. While there's no indication they are considering separation, the trust and partnership that defined their relationship has been severely damaged. They continue to share residences and appear together at official functions, but the warmth and genuine affection that characterized their public interactions has noticeably diminished. Body language experts analyzing recent appearances note increased physical distance and fewer spontaneous moments of connection between them. The emergency order has clarified the pathway to William's eventual succession in ways that could prove beneficial despite the painful circumstances. By reducing Camilla's influence and solidifying William's role as the clear heir with significant input into the monarchy's direction, Charles has essentially begun a gradual transition of power. This wasn't how he imagined his reign would unfold, but it may ultimately prove beneficial for the institution's long-term health. William has time now to prepare, to implement his vision gradually, and to establish himself as the future of the monarchy while his father still reigns. The working relationship between Charles and William has reportedly improved dramatically since the emergency order, with father and son communicating more openly and collaboratively than they have in years. This partnership could allow for a smoother eventual transition than might otherwise have occurred. Prince William and Catherine now face the challenge of using this opportunity wisely and responsibly. They have won a significant victory in the palace power struggle, but they must be careful not to appear triumphant or vindictive. Particularly William's Earthshot Prize and homelessness initiatives and Catherine's early childhood development programs, while maintaining respectful relationships with Charles and even Camilla. The stronger their public standing and the more successful their initiatives, the more justified Charles's decision will appear in retrospect. They have an opportunity to demonstrate that the next generation of royals truly does represent a positive evolution for the monarchy. Their challenge is to pursue that goal while avoiding any appearance of forcing Charles aside or diminishing his reign. The delicate balance between preparing for the future and respecting the present requires careful navigation. On the other hand, it exposes dysfunction and personal conflicts that undermine the carefully cultivated image of a united family dedicated to service above self. The mystique that has historically protected the monarchy from excessive scrutiny has been penetrated, revealing very human flaws and failings. Some argue this humanizes the royals in positive ways, while others contend it damages the quasi-mystical authority that justifies the institution's existence. The long-term impact may depend on how the story concludes and what narrative ultimately takes hold. If Camilla finds a graceful way forward, if family relationships heal over time, if the monarchy emerges stronger and more focused, this episode may be remembered as a necessary correction. If resentments fester, if further conflicts emerge, if public confidence continues to erode, it may be seen as the beginning of a terminal decline. Palace officials are already working on strategies to move past this crisis and restore public confidence. Plans are being developed to emphasize continuity, stability, and the monarchy's ongoing work on behalf of the nation and Commonwealth. There will likely be carefully staged public appearances showing Charles and Camilla working together amicably, even if privately the relationship remains strained. The goal is to present an image of normalcy and dedication to duty that reassures the public and quiets speculation. William and Catherine will take on increasingly prominent roles, gradually preparing the public for the transition to the next reign, while being careful not to overshadow Charles. Their children will be featured more prominently in carefully controlled ways, reminding people of the monarchy's continuity and future. The strategy relies on time, consistent messaging, and the hope that new stories and events will eventually overshadow this controversy. Some royal observers believe this crisis could accelerate Charles's timeline for abdication, though this remains highly speculative. If the personal cost of remaining king while navigating this family conflict becomes too high, he might decide to step aside in favor of William sooner than anyone anticipated. While there's currently no indication this is being actively considered, it remains a possibility that cannot be entirely dismissed. A voluntary abdication would be unprecedented in modern British history, but might appeal to Charles if he concludes it serves the institution's best interests and allows him to exit on his own terms. He has waited his entire life to be king, but he has also spent that lifetime devoted to the monarchy as an institution. If he believed stepping aside would secure its future, he might make that sacrifice, though such a decision would likely only come after several more years of reigning. The ultimate legacy of the emergency order may not be known for years or even decades. History will judge whether Charles made the right decision, whether it was handled properly, and whether it ultimately strengthened or weakened the monarchy. Future biographers and historians will have access to documents, private correspondence, and testimony from participants that will provide a fuller picture than we can currently assemble. What is clear now is that the British royal family has entered a new chapter, one marked by generational change, power struggles resolved through extraordinary means, and the difficult challenge of balancing tradition with the demands of the modern world. The crown endures, as it has for over 1,000 years, but the people who wear it and serve it continue to grapple with very human conflicts and very difficult choices. The emergency order signed by King Charles represents both an ending and a beginning, closing one chapter of the monarchy's story while opening another whose conclusion remains unwritten. This historic emergency order marks a turning point for the British monarchy that will echo for generations. The full implications are still unfolding, and new details emerge daily. What do you think about King Charles's decision? Was it necessary to protect the monarchy's future, or has he gone too far? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss updates on this developing royal crisis and other breaking stories from inside the palace walls.